Welcome to the Backpack Show, everybody. As you can see, Chris Brogan has been detained, but not to worry because business psychologist Bill Berman is here to talk about his book, Influence and Impact. And it's all about how you can excel at what your organization needs from you the most. So you're going to have to tell us all what to do in the middle of the Great Resignation. I feel like nobody is like super happy at their job. We have a lot to cover, is what I'm saying. So you're going to have to just hang out with us and promise to fix everything.
To do it.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Got to thank one of our sponsors right out of the gate.
Guests of the show stay at the inconveniently located from downtown or anywhere, never to be confused with luxurious and never updated FDR Hotel, located somewhere off Highway 84 near an old gas station with a burned out van parked out front with a for sale sign.
One of my favorites, putting the F in
great.
Accommodations.
I think I stayed there once.
Did you? Yeah, you would probably remember and then try not to ever tell anyone about the experience. If you'd like to do a show like this, you'll have to get your own business psychologist, but try StreamYard. cbrogan.me/StreamYard makes it real easy to bring your guests in, makes it easy to bring in comments, makes all the things fun and easy. And then you can turn it into an audio podcast with castos.com and syndicate it all the places. So thanks to our sponsors. We have a couple people who've already joined. Jane is here, Leslie, Chloe from Scotland. Hi, Chloe.
Wow.
And the Brogans checking in from Las Vegas. Hello. So first, a question, because you've been in business for a long time and had ideas and thoughts kind of, it sounds like to me, milling around about influence and impact, but now the book. So how long was the book percolating and why was now the time to pull the trigger?
Probably 10 years. And the reason the timing worked is because of COVID, actually. This is my COVID baby. I usually commute about 4 days a week into New York from Connecticut. So that was about 3 hours a day. And all of a sudden in March 2020, I didn't have to commute at all. So I had about 12 hours worth of time every week to do something with. So that idea that had been perking around for several years, all of a sudden it became a possibility. And so 9 months later, we sent the book to the publisher.
That's funny. My COVID baby is not letting me fit into any of the jeans I wore before COVID. So it's a whole other situation. So, what, I think just right off the top, what was the premise of the book? Like, what made you think that people needed to do better? Was it your coaching experience where you saw people floundering to succeed at jobs they should have been great at, or were they not in the right jobs? Like, what was it that prompted you to give this advice?
That's exactly right. I've coached hundreds of people over the past 20 years, and at least half of them, the problem they had was either they weren't doing the job that their boss or their company wanted them to be doing, or they were doing it in a way that the culture couldn't allow. So they were aggressive when they should have been collaborative, or they were bringing people along when they should have been decisive. It didn't matter. It just, when there was a mismatch of the culture and when they were doing things that weren't central to what their job was.
One example, I think, that really stuck with me that you've talked about is how one person thought she was doing a great job building the long-term brand at the organization, but they were just looking towards acquisition.
Yep.
So no one's super happy about that. So talk a little bit about that and how you helped her fix that.
So we sat down, it was a referral from a friend who's in the field also. And he said, she's doing a great job, but she seems to be focused. She's not focused on the right stuff. She's doing things. She's not helping us get to where we want to get. And so when she and I sat down and she started talking about her long-term plan for the business, and I knew she was owned by private equity, I said, well, how long is it till they want to liquidate the asset? And she sort of stopped and thought, oh, that's a good question. I think it's 24 to 36 months. I said, I think you ought to check on that, because that seems like a very long time for private equity. And she came back the next time and said, no, it turns out it's more like 12 to 18 months. And I said, then what's the most important thing to do? She said, keep the sales up. And I said, so now you know what you need to be doing. You're not building a brand. You're not building a 10-year company. You're doing exactly the right thing for the wrong business. And it was sort of like, a lightning bolt for her, because she was doing what she knew best. She was doing what she was comfortable with. She was doing with what was familiar, and she was really good at it. It just wasn't the right thing. And they actually ended up selling the company in 9 months. So it moved very quickly, and it was all because she was focused on her revenues and keeping her revenues up.
So she turned it around. Are people
Absolutely.
ever resistant? Like if she feels like she's really good at building the long-term brand and that's going to be good no matter what, some people might actually be a little resistant to changing course.
Absolutely. All the time. But when they start, for most of the people I work with, when they realize what the reality is, they adapt. I had another client who had come from a small financial technology firm, and it was real rough and tumble, and everybody would be in each other's faces, and then they go out for a beer, and it was just the culture. And he moved to an organization that was very staid, very diplomatic, very pseudo collaborative, and he just didn't fit in. And so he was doing all the stuff they needed him to do, all the things they had hired him to do, but he was doing it in a way that made everybody reject him. And so even the changes were what they wanted, they weren't accepting the changes. And when we focused on that and said, you have to adapt to the culture, you have to be agile here, it sort of hit him with a ton of bricks, and he started changing. And so I see people embrace the change once they realize what's really required of them. They just haven't really focused on what's required.
So I think there's an important thing to point out here. One is that you can accept the job based on what you think the job is, which may or may not be correct. The second is you can do the job, like technically be getting things done, and still not succeed.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the most important thing is every time your boss changes, every time the business strategy changes, every time there's a reorganization, every time you get a new team, it's a new job. So this is not just like a one and done thing. You have to be constantly looking at what's the current environment, what's the current culture, what do I need to do to meet the needs of this organization today?
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's been so much reshuffling right now, not only people leaving jobs to seek greater satisfaction, but also leadership changes,
Absolutely.
mergers, acquisitions, like all over the place. So when you feel like you have it knocked, it can feel threatening for like a new executive or a new leadership team to come in. How do you help people combat that and embrace the change that is coming anyhow?
Well, what I work with a lot of people on is what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. So this is a psychologist who's been doing research on this stuff for 30, 40 years. And she's brilliant. And what she found out with all this is that there are sort of two poles of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And the fixed mindset is that I am who I am, and that never changes, and it's not going to get better. And if I'm failing at something, it's because I'm a failure or because I can't learn a new thing. The classic and the growth mindset is everything that goes wrong, every time I'm not successful, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow. So there's a constant sense of I can do more, I can do better with enough effort and time. And so what I try to get all my clients to do is adopt that growth mindset, so that when things don't go wrong or when they're not feeling like it's working right, it's not a failure. It's an opportunity to learn new skills, to learn a new style of culture, to try new things, so that you get better at those things that you want to get better at. The classic phrase is you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm convinced that you can teach old dogs new tricks if you and the dog are both motivated.
So Francis is starting a new job after 32 plus years with the same company. So on Monday, new job. What advice do you have? Because that's a sea change, right?
The first thing you need to spend the first couple of weeks trying to learn. So you get on a new job, you get a certain amount of time to be stupid. where you ask where dumb questions are allowed because you haven't had experience.
How long can we stretch that out?
Well, that's, and it varies from company to company. So sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3 months. So it depends a lot on what her responsibilities are and what her boss is like. But, at a very simple level, the first thing I tell people to ask their boss is, how do you like to be communicated with? Do you prefer emails or text messages or drop-bys? Do you want appointments? Do you want schedule? Do you want agendas? Or should we be free-flowing? So how do I work best with you? And some bosses will tell you, some bosses will say, I don't care, whatever you want to do. Don't believe them, right? It's not true. But that just means you have to figure out what it is they like. And you can learn that by seeing, when do they respond? What do they react to? What do they not react to? If you send them an email, does it take them 3 days to get back? And if you send them a text, it's 10 minutes. That tells you something. So
I had one boss who I vividly remember this. I worked in an organization where everyone else in the place liked to flag things that they attached to, they'd be like, hey, this email has an attachment. I'm going to put a red flag on it. My boss hated it. She didn't tell me that. But so I sent her something, put a red flag on it. She came over and was like, in the interest of collegiality, I feel like I should tell you. I hate that. So some people will tell you, some people won't.
Listen, I worked in a place. I'm a very outgoing person. I'm very extroverted. And I took a job in a place. And so I would drop, if I had a question for one of the people there, I would drop by. And after about 3 weeks, somebody finally said to me, you're being very rude. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, if you want to come talk to me, I'm in the middle of work. So I need you to send me an email and ask me when would be a good time for you to talk to me. And he's literally 3 doors down the hall from me. But that was the culture. And you either piss people off unintentionally or you learn what the culture is and adapt to it.
So I want to bring this comment up from Leslie. There's also the element of being in a job and due to staff shortages, having to be more flexible for the overall good of the organization. That's a situation a lot of people are in right now, right? Because that's the other half of the Great Resignation, is the people who don't resign and have to pick up the slack. How do you reassess? Because you don't necessarily want to pick something up forever, but once you touch it, it's kind of yours.
Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes you can negotiate that. I think in a lot of situations, it's really helpful if you're willing to take new things on. So the whole book is called Influence and Impact. And one of the ways that you have influence in the organization is you solve problems for the organization or for your boss or for your boss's boss. And if there's a gap, and you can step in and do something to fix it, that really helps, and people will appreciate that, and they'll come back to you for other stuff. Now, you do have to be aware that that's not an opportunity for them to just pile things on and for you to give up the rest of your life to solve their problems. But if you're creative about it and you think about it, you can work with your manager or with your team or with whoever to find a new solution to that problem. The biggest challenge you have are bosses who don't want to give up anything but have less staff or less money or less resources to do it. That's a whole nother issue.
What do you do if you have that issue? So if you're working for someone who's a person like that wants to kind of hold on to everything, it can start to look like they don't need you. So what do you do?
Well, one of the 5 worst pieces of advice people have given in the business world is do more with less. You can't do more with less. So what you have to do is figure out what are you going to do first? What are you going to do second? What are you going to do third? And when somebody brings you something or puts you in that position, you have to be able to say to them, I really want to get this done, but here's what I can get done in the amount of time I have. And let's try to figure out how we can get it done at the same time. So you make it a shared problem rather than either just taking it on and being overwhelmed or saying, no, I can't do it. Because nobody wants somebody who says, no, I can't do it.
Definitely
no
not.
manager wants that.
Well, one of the things that I was reading about in the book was about a person who, I don't know how to put this. They start a new job and they see other people on the team doing things that they think they could do better or that they think should be rightfully theirs, and they get a little bit grabby, and before you know it, they're trying to take things from other people without having first proven that they can do the job they were hired to do. So what underlies that mindset? How do you counteract it when you work with someone?
Well, there's a case of exactly that in the book, and it's a woman who came in. She was came in as head of digital marketing, and she immediately started grabbing other pieces of marketing and sales and commercial stuff. And the CEO kept saying to her, "I don't want you doing that. I want you doing this." And she kept saying, "Well, I can't do this until I do this and this and this and this." But it was really just a power grab. And I wasn't her coach. I was watching her do this. And
that's worse, because then do you say something?
No, the thing, listen, I've been doing this for a long time. And the thing I've learned is not to give people advice when they haven't either asked for it or been told they have to take it.
That's good advice.
It's people don't hear advice and most of the time when people ask advice for the first time, they're really saying, "I'm doing a great job, aren't I?" So you really have to almost wait for people to ask you twice before you really tell them what you think.
Because they just aren't ready to deal with their stuff.
The fundamental message is do your job. What is your job? What is success for you? And get that done. Once you establish that you have expertise in the area they want you to have expertise in, and that you can deliver it consistently, then you can start to really build your influence and increase your impact in the organization.
I'm about to ask you a question about what your options are when you've done the assessment and found like a little bit of a misalignment. But before I do that, I need to thank PreSearch. So if you want to get quality search results without using the other one and giving them all your data, try PreSearch. It's a decentralized search engine. You actually earn crypto rewards for using it if you're logged in. Chris was using it for like months and not logged in, but it's a damn fine search engine, so he didn't mind. But PreSearch.com, check that out and get all the searches done. Okay, there, we've covered it. Got all our ads. Now, so you recommend, taking stock of what the organization needs, what will make you feel satisfied in your job.
Yeah.
What if after you've done that, there seems to be like a mismatch between your role or the organization and you?
So you have three choices, basically, and this is a key pivot point for anybody. The first question is, do you like what the job is supposed to be and the people you're working with enough to stay there? And if you are, then you got to figure out, how do I get from where I am to where I need to be? And if you don't like the job as you figured out it really is defined, then you have two choices. Either you can try to work with the organization to find a better fit, or you move on. And I have to say, I've had clients who have spent years trying to get their company to be what they want the job to be. And that never works, or almost never works. And so, but they keep trying. And when they realize, you know what, I'm in the wrong job, I'm in the wrong company, I'm working for the wrong people, either because it's not my skill set, or because we share different values, or it's just not what I like, that's when you have to start moving on. And sometimes you have to spend a little time grieving that, because you've been working at it for for months or years. And all of a sudden you go, boy, this is the wrong thing to be doing. But there's always a life after, I have to tell you. I've never seen.
Oh, you know better than anyone, because you've had 30 years of experience. You're coaching. You've had a lot of different roles in your lifetime. So I think you're the perfect person to give that advice. Joanne says, Bill's perspective also works for me as a freelancer. I can use these perspectives with my clients. And Annette says, great advice about giving advice. Don't give without being asked for it, or if they've been told to take the advice. I like that too. Cedric has a question. What about startups that want to be enterprises, specifically with legacy employees who don't know how to do their job when the company is becoming an enterprise? So this sounds like growing pains.
Yeah.
To me.
That's a really good question. Thanks, Cedric. It's, when a company is growing fast, the hardest thing as a business leader is to recognize that the people who join a 20 or 30 person company or a 2-person company are not the same people who are going to join a 200 or a 2,000 person company. They may not have the skills, they may not have the sophistication, the political savvy to manage in a much larger organization, and they may not even be able to think in the way you need to think when you've got 2,000 people working all together. So, and you try to get people to develop, you try to get them to learn those new skills, but not everybody wants to. And for some people, it just isn't what they want to be doing. And that's when you have to make tough decisions. If you're doing it because it's in the best interest of the person as well as you, it's going to be much more effective. So I started out by saying you needed to be able to exit. You needed to have expertise in something, and you needed to have consistent execution on whatever it is you're supposed to be doing. You also have to have empathy, both for the individuals in the organization and for the culture of the organization. So you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes. And so if you can be understanding and empathic with the people who work for you, even if they're not the right people, then you're going to be able to be more helpful to them. And I don't mean I don't mean sympathetic. I mean understand their experience. So empathy and sympathy are different.
That's true. Another thing that I think people might miss is, it's right in the title of the book, but influence and impact. You can't always get things done, even if you have the authority to, just by telling people to do it. You need to influence them to do it. So how do you build influence for whatever your role is? You could be the CEO, you could be an individual contributor. You still need to your stock in trade is influence.
I worked with a company at a few years ago, and the CEO wanted to make a change. He wanted to move toward a more process-oriented organization, whatever that meant. And he said, "Thou shalt do it." And he told everybody this was what they were going to do. And we came back a year later, and he was furious at the organization because nothing had changed. And he didn't understand why he hadn't gotten everybody to change just because he told them to. And so the people I was working with, we had to help him understand that he had to sell this. He had to get everybody on board. He had to get people excited and motivated. You know, I tell people 20th century was the century of leading by authority. 21st century is leading through influence. It's most of the time the people who you need to do things don't work for you, don't report to you, aren't accountable to you. You have to get them to want to follow you. And that's why a lot of people are more focused on followership these days than they are on leadership. So how do you get people to come with you on the journey you want to take them on?
So what does make you persuasive in that way? What makes you influential in the classic sense of the word?
So it's fundamentally the foundation of that is three things. It's the expertise. So it's knowing how to do something so that people know you have skill and are somebody to go to for something, whatever that is. And you have consistent execution. In a business setting, you could be the smartest person in the country, but if you're not able to do what they need you to do, you're not going to be successful. So it's expertise and consistent execution. And it's that understanding for the organization. So the culture fit, the people fit. Once you do those things, you've got a seat at the table. People are willing to listen to you. And that's when you can start having a big impact by identifying and solving problems, by working with other people to solve their problems, not just your problems, but the organization's problems or your problems. You can step up and do more. And don't wait for the promotion necessarily to do more. I'm not saying don't look for promotions, but if you show people that you're willing to do stuff, they're willing to help you along too. I had a good friend who was in a large organization right when COVID hit, and they had to do a huge downsizing. I'm talking tens of thousands of people had to be let go or furloughed. And she came up with a way to help these people look for jobs, look for finances, deal with unemployment, all those things, and got her staff helping those people solve that problem. And it was a huge load off her boss's shoulders. And they were thrilled with her, and she got a promotion out of it. So she helped the company, they helped her. So that's really how you start influencing, is you develop that foundation and then you start solving problems. That's when you have real influence, and when you're a thought leader and an influencer.
So you could put that same idea on the table as a new person who has not yet established yourself at the organization, and it would totally flop. Like no one would help you execute.
That's right. That's right. You have to help them execute when you come in. You have to help other people get done what they want to get done. And make sure you share. I had another client who, she thought her job was to tell people when to do what she needed them to do. And she was spending half her time saying, no, we're not doing that job because that doesn't fit. No, we're not doing that job because that doesn't fit. And everybody was pissed off at her. And what we did was help her realize that she needed to go to them and say, you have this problem. Here's what we're trying to do. How can we come up with a solution? And so she was solution focused and in many ways customer focused. And a year later, she got a big promotion and a much bigger team, because all of a sudden people started realizing she was on their side.
So Annette says, great questions and conversation. Thanks for the insights. And Papa Brogan says, after expressing my discomfort with the job, there's two part. Went to an opportunity that would allow me to use my skills as a software coder. Almost immediately, my job changed to becoming an analyst, a job I did not like. After expressing my discomfort with the job, ended up leaving a few months later and going back to my former job and better fit to what I wanted to do, and was happier there. So that's interesting. It's like going back to go forward in your career.
Well, and that was it. That's exactly it. When you realize that the job isn't, and he's not alone. There are lots of people who get job A and come in, and within 2 months they're doing job B. And when you realize that that's not the job you want to be doing, then making the decision to get out now rather than keep trying to make it work and keep trying to make other people happy when you're not good at that and you're not having fun. A friend of mine, George Bratt, my co-author, said there are only 3 interview questions. And I think that's true on both sides. Can I do the job? Will I love the job? And will I like working with these people? And what it turned out for this guy, it's not gonna make him happy. He's not gonna love the job. Maybe he can do it. He probably was a pretty good analyst, but it's not gonna make him happy. And so you got to move on.
So we've reached the part of the show where we pick up person of the day.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Cedric, I loved your question about startups that wanted to be enterprises. So Cedric, you are our person of the day. That gets you a free apple. All you have to do is purchase it yourself, clean it up really good, and bake it into a tartlet or something. That's what I would recommend. Now, Bill, the question that everyone who comes on the show answers, everybody from Sir Mix-a-Lot of Baby Got Back to Sister Anne Flanagan from the Daughters of St. Paul, known as the Media Nuns, is what goes in your backpack for success. Some people will say something physical like beef jerky. Some people will say something a little metaphorical like hope for the future or something. So what goes in your backpack for success?
You mean besides my book?
Besides your book, obviously. You can't say your book or your 7-part framework or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say it's courage and humility.
Courage and humility.
Yep.
It's 2 things, but I'm going to let you have it. Cedric's happy. Be a person.
Will you? Yeah. And by the way, something to put all your wires and cables and plugs and chargers in. So don't have them floating around in your backpack. Just put them in
adapters. If you're ever going to present, if anybody here has designs on presenting someday, bring your own dongles and connectors. Like they never have the right one. And if you let them run your presentation off their computer, it gets messed up like 100% of the time. So don't
100%.
do it. So, everybody should go pick up this book. I got a copy along with a lovely handwritten note from you. So I imagine that's a little something. There's stuff about networking in the book. So handwritten notes, everyone.
Absolutely.
They still work. Go and get your copy. And you can do that at bermanleadership.com/influence and impact. Now, there was at one point some talk about Chris's grandmother when she was alive doing something like this, like writing a book on influence, because there was about everybody in that town listened to her. But it turned out surprisingly did not make her popular.